where this has led me to today, and I am in a big time learning mode. I've been drinking from a fire hydrant for about 2 years. And I was talking to Barry, I visited pretty good while yesterday, and it's just been a blast. I mean, I was telling him, I said, what it really is, it's brought me a lot of life and joy. I mean, farming and agriculture is hard. I mean, hands in the dirt, it's back breaking, it's sweaty. I mean, there's times I go home and my wife says, don't come near me. You smell horrible. I'm like, honey, that's a smell of production, you know? so, so, but it is really a joy to, and it's not, I think it's not just manipulating something for the benefit of me. It's, I really have found, my hands in the dirt brings me one of the greatest satisfactions in life. It's just having that connection with the earth and know that I'm working with a living system to produce to help living systems. I mean, it's the full cycle of life. And so it began this journey down of, so what's in our soil? I mean, what exactly is going on? Mostly we paid attention to with the top half above the ground. And so try to do, Allie's encouraged me to do a little teaching segment every week, but I kind of wanted, this is hopefully about a 60,000 foot flyover of a thing called nutrient cycling, because I think it's really important. I told Scotty I could talk about this all day if you want me to, but y'all would fire me and go, see you later. But it is, I'm very passionate about this. And this is what's happening in the ag space now. There are folks that going, what we're doing is not working. We've got to go. And they all go, we should probably go back to the way my grandfather farmed, which was utilizing the land for the land's benefit. And so this concept called nutrient cycling, if you Google nutrient cycling, you might come up with some cycling videos about like Lance Armstrong or somebody. So that's not the one I'm talking about. But nutrient cycling is really what drives the economic, the ecosystem, the system. The word system is important. Sustainably. I mean, we can pour money into it, but it's going to be a law of diminishing returns. It really is not beneficial for long-term health. And so this is a really simple portion. You've got this tree, and it's taking the carbon dioxide out of the air. It's producing oxygen. The tree dies. It decomposes. If you can see the picture, there's some little mushrooms coming up down there in the bottom, and that stimulates new plant growth. And then the growth turns into maturity. And then you've got water as a main component of this. Water's is coming up. So Scotty mentioned drought resistance and water retention. Those are really, really critical things. The nutrient cycle, it's the exchange of both living and non-living things. It's that symbiotic relationship to make things thrive. And so it's the inorganic and organic matter movement and exchange through the soil, and it actually is about the production of matter. So it's the replacement of the nutrients that were taken up that are replaced back in the soil for plants' growth and health. So I've got inputs, I've got some activity, and I've got outputs, if you want to think linear that way. But really, this is a cycle. So in the nutrient cycle, these are some of the main cycles that exist within this total cycle. So you've got the carbon cycle, and carbon is really the currency for plant growth. Carbon is the currency for plant growth. So plants acquire carbon through the photosynthetic process, light, water energy coming down, chlorophyll, and it converts carbon dioxide into organic compounds. That's very important. Then you've got the nitrogen cycle. So this is bacteria, converts to atmospheric nitrogen, which is about 78% of the air that we breathe, into usable forms like nitrates. Nitrates is important because you have nitrites. Nitrates are important. They're the good guys. And that's essential for plant growth and protein production. We all know you can't live without protein, right? So you got to have protein. Interesting, I don't know if you guys know this, but in a lightning storm, that lightning releases urea in the air that's tied up in the atmosphere and puts nitrogen in your soil. So I love a good thunderstorm because that's free fertilizer. So don't curse the storm. It's a good thing. And you got the phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus is released from rocks. So I think it's always quarried from somewhere. It's not naturally occurring. And through weathering, it's absorbed by the plants for energy transfer and root development. So you've got phosphorus is very, very important. We actually have an overabundance of phosphorus here at New Water. because of the fertilizers we've been putting out. So like an NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, that phosphorus it's not going to go away. The only way it really goes away is either plant uptake or it leaches or erodes away. So we've got a potential issue. I think we're okay, but if it's not taken up in the soil, it just stays there. And you look at all the water around us and you know what phosphorus does in the water and the issues it creates. So phosphorus is a big deal in places, watersheds and streams, and that phosphorus loss into our water supply is not a good thing. You guys know that. So you got the water cycle. Water is absorbed by roots for photosynthesis. You saw a little up air going up, nutrient transport and cooling, very important. Exposed soil here on an 80 degree day is probably in the range of 100 to 110 degrees at the soil surface. So water is very important for cooling. That's why mulching keeps that temperature down, because the moisture stays in the soil. And it's released back to the atmosphere through evapotranspiration. You've got the oxygen cycle. The plant's releasing the oxygen from the converted CO2, and it's a byproduct of photosynthesis. We need plants, because we need the oxygen, right? And then the sulfur cycle. We don't ever talk much about sulfur, but plants need sulfur. It's a very essential key trace element because it helps produce proteins, and it's essential in the chlorophyll cycle. So that's the nutrient cycle. That's the 6 main cycles within that nutrient cycle. So kind of just a graphic to help you. You've got, I think it's on the top. Yeah, up on the top right, obviously it rains. You've got water and oxygen coming down, penetrating the soil. Hopefully it's penetrating the soil. You've got animals and plants above ground. All those die at some point, or particularly in this case with this tree, the leaves fall off and die. So you've got this organic matter on the top of the soil. It decomposes, it breaks down, leaches to the soil. Now you've got organic matter. And so you've got minerals and nutrients are released to the soil. It takes back up in the plant. And then you've got this rocks breaking down, things like, phosphorus, but the rocks breaking down create the soil. I was talking about slow motion here, right? And some of these things, but that's kind of the picture of the cycle. Then let's talk about a little bit about below the soil. So obviously, back above the soil, you've got the plants and the animals, the green stuff, the live stuff, the stuff that's walking around. They're pooping and peeing, and think about the large bison herds moving through. They're fertilizing the land. They're taking the plants in. It's coming back out the other end, right? So they're fertilizing. But below the soil, you've got a lot of cool stuff happening. This is where Ryan started introducing me to some of this good stuff, because I had forgot about all these words. I guess I didn't memorize enough to pass the test, but there's a lot of stuff I didn't know. So on the left side, and both of these things are going on, you've got the plant roots that go down in the ground, and they're taking up, but also remember these plants are sending stuff out. The exudates, so stuff's going out from the roots as well. But you've got the organic matter. It's the living, was once living, is now dead, but it's decomposing. And you've got 2 things going on. You got the bacteria, and then you got the fungi. And my wife says, the fun guys. I want to be with the fun guys. Well, there's good fungus and bad fungus, good bacteria, bad bacteria. And it's really important, this ratio, and this was a new thing for me. The fungal bacteria ratio is very, very critical. It's interesting, in the forest, that ratio is about 14 to 1, 14 to 20 to 1, 14 to 1. Think 15 to 1. You can remember that. But for vegetables, it's 1 to 1. And so like right now, the soil is cool, so you don't have a lot of fungal activity, but I measured it back when it was in the 60s, 60 degrees, not back in the 1960s, but back at 60 degrees. And we had about 0.4 was our ratio. So we don't have the activity in the soil that we need to have. So now we're working to bring that up. But you've got the fungal, the bacteria, they feed the shedder arthropods, and they feed on dead matter. So the fungus and the bacteria, as they die, they feed on those, and they feed the arthropods, the predators. Those are the bugs that eat the other living things. So you've got the cycle, and you've got other things like nematodes and the protozoas, those microscopic kinds of things that are up feeding the other things. You've got the birds that eat the bugs. The bird dies, it goes back into the soil. The bird poops and goes into the soil. And it's similar on the other side. And you've got the roots, the nematodes feeding off the roots. And you got the fungi, and they're feeding the nematodes. You got the shedders, the predators. You got all this. So that cycle, you can see that. So you've got microscopic things happening below the soil that feed more macroscopic, that are feeding bigger things. So that cycle is what's happening. And that is how that's the food web. And so that's part of nutrient cycling. When you don't have these activities below the soil, you have very poor nutrient cycling. And so that, what Scotty mentioned a while ago, was the need. You've got to put something on it. You've got to feed it with something. And the answer has been feed it with this fertilizer. And interesting, there are things coming out now that say, hey, we've got this conference that we're going to talk about feeding your soil. And in the picture they had was synthetic fertilizers, what they were going to feed the soil with. I'm like, I don't think that feeds the soil. That'll feed your plant, but it's actually detrimental long-term to your soil. So there's some other things that we have to do other than just put a bunch of chemicals in it to make this happen. And actually the chemicals impede this. We were discussing a while ago about some you heard the word antimicrobial. Well, that could be bad if you're trying to grow the good kind of fungi and microbes that are needed in the soil. There might be something that, in particular, pesticides are the worst because they'll kill everything. You might spray it for one bug, but you got to wipe out everything, and it stays in the soil. So what might, be good and becomes detrimental in the end. So you have to just slow down, take a deeper look at what's going on. So how can we help the nutrient cycle? We've got to manage our soils for healthy plants first by testing the soil. What the heck is going on down there? And I would suggest the first thing you do is a standard soil test. It will tell you your major elements, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium levels, and it'll also tell you some trace elements. It'll tell you your pH. But I would go deeper. There's a thing called the Haney test, and it'll tell you your carbon and nitrogen ratios. It won't. The Haney won't tell you the fungal to bacteria ratio, but you can buy a device for about $120 and you can test it yourself. And the results takes you 20 minutes to get the results. You don't have to send soil off and all that stuff. So that's a really great thing to do. But things like pH are really important. A lot of these chemical inputs will move the pH in a bad way. So you got to really pay attention. But the thing is, I've said before, in the medical world, if you got a recommendation from your doctor without a diagnosis, in the medical world, that's called fraud. So you have to have a diagnosis to make a plan. What's going on? And so for years, we just went with what the guy told us back in 2012 to put on the dirt. We had no idea what was going on in the soil. And once we found out, we're like, oh my gosh, we got an issue here. I mean, you could see it in the plants. So that's what it was. But then Scotty mentioned some things in the regenerative space. The diversity of plants is really important. Monoculture. And I've been to a conference recently and they said, this is in the Midwest, they said, if your planting plan is corn, soybeans, wheat, corn, soybeans, year over year, that's not a crop rotation. That's just the same thing over and over because different plants require different nutrients and they're taking things out of the soil. And if you just do the same thing over and over, you're depleting certain elements in those soils that other plants need. So the more diversity you can have, the healthier your system is going to be. And a diversity of plants throughout the year enables the roots to be in the soil as much as possible. We shoot for year long to have a living root in the ground at all times. So that's really important when you see that these roots, and we're going to look at something in a second, why the root in the ground is really important, but it's bringing things in from outside and put it in the soil for you. And so it's really important to have that root in the ground. The other thing it's doing is drawing water up. So it's helping you keep that moisture in the ground over time. I used to duck hunt in the Mississippi Delta, and those fields lay bare. They actually would till them and hill them up, and they would stay bare for 6 months before they replanted. So you've got carbon loss, you've got moisture loss. I heard stories of some big dust storms in the Midwest where people died because they couldn't see and they had big car crashes. And they were caused from bare soil. I mean, the wind just comes through and blows the soil and you can't see and you run into the guy behind you. So really, really important. Scotty mentioned tillage. And that's disturbing the soil. And what happens a lot of times is, and I can show you here, we won't do it today, but I can show you here. There's a little patch we call the potato garden. And I used the same tiller year over year over year. And it would till about 3 inches, but you hit 3 inches and it's hard as a rock. So I created a hard pan by just continually breaking up that same soil. And the sad thing is a lot of good stuff's happening in the top 3 inches. And when you disturb that, you've nixed it. So you've killed the life in your soil the more that you till. And we liked, I don't know, maybe we just like the way it looks, nice and neat and smooth. And what happens is you make it smaller and smaller and finer, you reduce the pore space. So when it rains, it actually compacts. And now you got a hard crust on top. So guess what? The water doesn't penetrate, it runs off, you got erosion issues. So tillage is it might look good and feel good. One of my friends in graduate school used to call it recreational plowing. I mean, just go out there and have fun driving around, black smoke coming out of the smokestack. I mean, that was, we're farming. But also the synthetic fertilizer, your pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, that disturbs the soil balance. So I'm going to minimize that. And then as to covering the soil, you'll hear the word soil armor. That's going to minimize erosion and nutrient loss. But also, even when you have a plant on there, mulch and compost to keep that soil covered. There's some great videos. If you just Google soil temperature, blah, 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 and guys going through in the summertime, just the sunshine. And even if I'm out here where we've had bad soil and I'm weeding, I said, golly, man, it burned my hand. It's so hot. So I don't think our plants like that too much. But so that's how can we help. This is a cool thing. It's called the soil aggradation climb. And aggradation means to build. So this is a way that we would build our soils back. So it starts at the bottom with, increased biological activity, introduction of organic matter, which is going to create improved nutrient cycling. So that soil is sustaining itself. So soil structure is really important. That's aggregation. So that's things like pore space, deeper soils that would, obviously increase health outcomes for the plants. But then it just seems counterintuitive too, because I know growing up, I remember my dad. We had a garden, and he had held this soil up, and goes, "Look how nice and smooth that is." I'm like, "This is lifeless." I mean, it's like a handful of sand off the beach, and and so the soil structure is going to increase the water availability, and what that means is we've raised our organic matter in our garden out here to 5%, which doesn't sound like much. And they say here in Alabama, if you got 1%, you're doing really, really, really well. But shared this fact before, but a 1% organic matter in your soil will absorb a 1-inch rain event. No runoff. So that's 26,000 gallons of water in an acre. A lot of water. And I think I was thinking about this the other day. The anomaly we have here in Alabama is we get 65 inches of rain a year. So we're like, water? We got plenty of it. But these guys that are 5 and 10 inches of rainfall a year, they got some really productive farms. The whole one of the Mexican desert, Chihuahua Desert, the guys has reclaimed the whole thing, grasslands, 10 inches, less than 10 inches of rain a year. So a 5% organic matter will take a 5-inch rain, which is about 110,000 gallons of water in an acre. And we can stand here and watch it. It'll puddle a little bit in some of the compacted, like the walking zones, but where the growing zones are, we have zero runoff. And so we're not losing our soil. It's got that water available when the drought comes, when the heat comes. We've got that water available for the plants. So this is a big deal about what's going on below the soil is really important for what's going to happen above the soil. So how do we know it's working? I guess the question is, are your plants healthy and green? Are they got pests? They got diseases? Are the plants productive? What does the heat do to your plants? Do they wilt and die? And over year, what does your soil analysis say? What are your soil tests telling you? And the big one is, are earthworms present? So I might call Ryan and say, Ryan, why are earthworms that important? What would you say? Why are earthworms? Why should we have earthworms in our soil? Aerate it. Yep.
Other good bacteria, thrive. So, and they can take in anything that's potentially harmful.
Right.
To enter the soil. By the time it comes out,
I don't know if this is a good analogy, but a buzzard can eat anything. Doesn't kill them. Yeah. So earthworms are, I mean, that's one of the first things they'll tell you is, hey, you got any earthworms in your soil? And so, man, we found an earthworm out here. We do like jumping jacks. Yeah, we found an earthworm. And it's interesting too, if you do I'm thinking about this, you do a compost pile, you just pile up leaves. Where's the good stuff? It's the bottom of the pile, right? And you go through that pile and that's where all the worms are, and it's dark and really nice stuff. So the other thing is there an increase in your diversity? Are you seeing more insects, more birds? Not just plants, but animal life. Are you seeing more of that? We started to see a few more birds here, and we intentionally planted some things for butterflies and other pollinators. So we're seeing more of those because those are good and they're necessary. But is there good aggregation in your soil? Are you capturing water or are you losing it? Are you just watching it go down and thinking, all you can do is look at the color of the water running off? I mean, we have some intense storms here, and we've increased our mowing heights to slow the water down so we don't have as much soil runoff. And we can stand here and a lot of our runoff, the water's clear. So we're not losing our soil because we've kept the ground covered. Very, very important. This is what I really want to kind of get into. This is kind of the cool stuff. So mycorrhizal fungi, the fun guys. So this is, I don't know, you think this is kind of this is kind of new in the discussions in agriculture. So on the left side of the plant, you have an independent pathway, independent of mycorrhizal fungi. So this is probably a conventional agriculture snapshot, if you will. So you do have some bacteria in the soil, and you've got these little red round circles or nutrients, fertilizer, if you will, the little round blue and white, inorganic, organic, nitrates and nitrites, for instance. So that's kind of the mechanism to feed the plant. And you've got these root nodules that take these nutrients in. And so you've got a root mass, right? You've got a root ball, and it's pulling the stuff in. There's some things that happen through the plant that it puts back in the soil. But for the most part, it's pretty limited. So the rhizosphere is that region around the root ball. But on the right-hand side, you've got this fungal network. You still have bacteria in the soil, but you can see the little myceliums, the little lines. These are extensions of the roots. So they attach to the root and go out. And you can see this network on the right-hand side is much greater than the left-hand side. And then think about these lines. If you add the surface area, you can see how much greater it is. So you got a better chance, and not a better chance, it's probably like the only chance, to capture more of what's going on in the soil to be taken up by the plant. So lots of studies. Ryan and I listened to a podcast a couple of years ago about they had found a network in Washington State, and they were able to somehow measure how vast it was. And I want to say, was it 200 miles? 200 miles big. Now, these things work together too. They're not independent. They'll start connecting to each other. And they were able to put a stimulus on one side, and within like less than 10 seconds, it was received on the 200 miles later. So my wife said that's, Garrison Keillor says faster than the Baptist prayer request. I mean, that is really quick. And so the cool thing, it wasn't just like, hey, something happened over here and we need to know about it. So this increases your plant's defensive mechanism. So this, you could think about a field of crops. These plants are talking to each other. I used to think it was a bunch of voodoo. I mean, come on, really? No, it really is the way God designed it. They're talking to each other. They're telling, hey, I've got this bug, so we're going to put our defenses up and defend ourselves, and all of y'all need to do it. But also, the really cool thing is, Ryan mentioned the earthworms, how it's taking the bad in and just putting the good out. These networks are two-way because they're vascular, so they can go this way and that way, uptake, outtake, into the soil, but soil to plant. But they also will stop the bad stuff from coming into the plant. They are a defensive and offensive network. So it's really, really important, these mycorrhizal fungi networks. And again, it's back to the fungal to bacteria ratio is important, but these are naturally occurring systems. We were talking earlier about it, some of it, and I got a friend that lives out in California, and some of the areas near him were devastated by the fires. And so my wife and I went hiking in one of the parks where it had been burned out. And we looked around, there's all these mushrooms just growing up. There's nothing else, not a living thing, but the place is covered in mushrooms. And so this fungal thing, which is the way it was designed, is bringing life back to, coming back to life. So we would say, it's a fungus, kill it, right? No. So really super, fire is essential. Purifying, right? So the tip of the fungi connect the plant roots to the soil. The soil from the root to the tip. And this picture on the left is a pine seedling, and it's probably what, 6-8 inches tall, probably. But look at this. You can see the root mass in the middle. It's the more darker things, but all the white stuff, that's the fungal network. So look at the increased in root activity for this one seedling, for the nutrient uptake. So these networks extend from the root into the soil, well beyond the zone by the root and the root hair. So usually when you pull a plant up, you get the root. You're probably not going to get much of this because they're so fine. But look at all the stuff that is taken up: nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, potassium, calcium, magnesium, iron, and other elements like zinc and manganese and copper. There is an exchange process that goes on between the carbon that's captured through the photosynthesis process and transfers in exchange with this. So the carbon's feeding these networks, right? And you go, well, if we eliminated the thing, then we'd have more carbon for the plant, right? Well, look at this last slide, last bullet point. The area of the hyphae, this extension of the roots, is 10 times more efficient than the root hairs and 100 times more efficient than the roots. So there's a lot of benefit going on. Here it is. The plant's colonized by the fungal network. It grows 10 to 20% faster than the non-colonized plants. And even though the plant's giving away 40 to 50% of liquid carbon to support and feed the network. So it's giving a lot of carbon away, but look at the benefit. The plant's growing to 10 to 20% faster. It's going to be much healthier. Higher leaf chlorophyll contents, which is increased photosynthesis, higher rates of photosynthesis than the non-colonized plants. So it's really, really important. As I said before, they've got a tubular system that allows bidirectional flow. So it's taking stuff's going out into the soil, but stuff's coming back in. And this is a cool thing. It can supply moisture because those, Scotty mentioned the hard pans, and you don't have penetration to that deeper soil. These can go find the pores that aren't accessible to the roots because they're so fine. So it's really going deep for all the benefits of the plant. So that's kind of a little quick overview of mycorrhizal fungi. So you're like, okay, how can we grow that stuff? Well, it's going to be through biologics and things like earthworm castings. I think my understanding is if you can grow earthworms and get earthworms going, it's going to follow behind. So again, it's looking at things as a system. I think the minimization of anything synthetic is going to kill it. But, things that break down on top of the soil are going to increase that network. So little quick teaching point there, and hopefully you go away with something about, ask your farmer, hey, how's your fungal to bacteria ratio doing? But yeah, it's really important. So obviously you can kind of see that it's important what we're doing to our soil because it's how we're going to be affected. Nick's borrowed my book, but a great book to read. It's a slow read because it's a lot of science. What Your Food Ate. Great book. It'll a little bit rock your world. David Montgomery's a geologist. His wife, Ann Bilkey, is a biologist. And they teamed up to write this book together. And it really is looking at what's in our food. David Montgomery reports that worldwide there's a 0.3% soil loss every year through erosion and wind and degradation. So 0.3%, he said, doesn't sound like much, but times 10 years, that's 3%. Times 100 years, that's a lot. So this is not just something we're concerned about. It's a global, and it takes it. They're able to, with regenerative practices and things like cover cropping and plant diversity, they're able to build soil faster than they used to think. They would just say, you can lose it quickly, but it takes 1,000 years to build an inch or something like that. But with these practices, we're able to build aggregation, if you will, to build these networks back.